Hi everyone, welcome back to Coffee Books and Rain, where I am finally finishing up recording quite a few books that I had to record today. Now I still have, I think, three more that I'm working on finishing, but I think this is going to get me pretty far into the next week or so. So we are going to keep on going. And today's book is The Autumn Springs Retirement Home Massacre. Now, if that's not a mouthful, I don't know what is. But it is by Philip Fracassi, and it is expected publication on September 25th. Oh wait, September 30th, 2025. So sorry. When Goodreads it says not published yet and expected 30 Sep 25. I was reading that all sorts of wrong. But this book was wild, and it is certainly horror slasher. And so, if that is something that may be triggering for you, I can understand, because some of the murders which take place in this retirement home are fairly gruesome. And so, if you are not one who could potentially stomach that sort of thing as it relates to the elderly, then this may not be a book for you to dive into. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there, because it was a little hard for me to picture these little old men and women um, suffering at the hands of this particular tormentor. So I do realize as I'm looking into my light that my glasses seem to have a bit of smudging on them. I had to take my contacts out when I got home from work because for some reason my right contact was feeling very dry. So I don't know if that's just allergies or what it was, but we can do glasses today. And so let us dive into the summary. Brimming with dark humor, violence, and mystery, The Autumn Springs Retirement Home Massacre is a blood-soaked slasher sure to keep readers cringing, laughing, and guessing until the very last page. Rose Dubois is not your average final girl. Rose is in her late 70s, living out her golden years at the Autumn Springs Retirement Home. When one of her friends dies alone in her apartment, Rose isn't too concerned. Accidents happen, especially at this age. Then another resident drops dead, and another. With bodies stacking up, Rose can't help but wonder, are these accidents, old age, or something far more sinister? Together with her best friend Miller, Rose begins to investigate. The further she digs, the more convinced she becomes there's a killer on the loose at Autumn Springs, and if she isn't careful, Rose may be their next victim. It is approximately 416 pages in hardcover. I had the audiobook and thought it was well done, and is expected publication September 30th of 2025. It was very kind of cringy, kind of gruesome, kind of horrific, definitely slasher, kind of hard, like I said, to imagine these old people being taken out in such ways. However, it is what it is. And I mean, I guess if we can do it to teenagers in the woods and all the other places that these sorts of, I guess, happenings happen in the fictional world, as I'm going to preface that, then it can happen in a retirement home as well, where death seems to be on most of the residents' doorsteps. So now, I liked this one particular reviewer's comments. I did read this as I was writing my own, that they said they'd like to think in about 10 or 12 years someone is going to make this into a movie, possibly starring Jamie Lee Curtis as the Rose Dubois. And I honestly now cannot get over that. I feel like that's perfect. And this person also says, I mean, you probably should just call me John Carpenter because we've got a lot of details to discuss. You've got my number. And I'm wondering how John Carpenter got their number, but hey, that's really cool and super fun. It seems as though they thought this was a pretty good book as well. But it is certainly a slasher. So sorry, I just finished my cup of coffee and I didn't have any more in the pot. Was going to grab me some water. Then I started recording without the water. So here I am, just, completely sans hydration recording this episode. But anyway, back to Rose and Miller. So Rose has been a part of this community for a little while, and she's a little bit bummed that her apartment in this particular retirement community isn't in the best location. There's like this sketchy warehouse like not too far away, and she's kind of on that side that's closer to that sketchy side. Well, she has her best friend Miller, and you can absolutely tell that there's some chemistry between these two individuals. But Rose has been burned in the past. She was married once. She has a daughter. Her daughter wants her to come live with her, but Rose is pretty content being at the retirement community, being at this retirement home. And so she's not feeling like moving in with her daughter. She's like, nah, it doesn't really feel like, the right thing for me. She likes her independence. She likes kind of being able to isolate when she wants to isolate. And again, like a lot of her best friends are here that she's made through this community, especially people like Miller. So these senior citizens are absolutely spunky. They are absolutely doing their thing, living their life, no shame, none of it. They are just doing what they do. And so I really like that. It's like, I guess, it's kind of like college for them, but without having to go to class. It's just all the time, whatever they want to do. They can have cocktail parties on a Tuesday and watch movies, those sorts of things. So, I don't know. I mean, it sounds pretty good in my personal opinion. But not until then the murders start kind of happening, and you're kind of like, oh man, because I'm really curious as to how this murderer was able to make these murders into seemingly accidents or almost like self-exits. And that's where I'm just like, wow, this is wild, because either these police are completely inept at what they're doing, or this murderer is really good. I mean, I hate to say that, but it is a fictional world and these are fictional people, so it's not really happening. I hope. I hope it's not a thing. But man, now I kind of want to Google to see if it's actually been a thing. Don't Google it. That sounds sad. I don't want to Google that. But so this murderer, who seems to be pretty good at this, we do get a couple chapters from their perspective, and I think when it comes to those chapters, that's when I started being able to put the pieces together of who our potential suspects were. There were just some things, like I had 2 people on my list, only 2, of who I actually thought it was going to be. And I was right on one of the cases. Of course, the other one I was like, it was a long shot, but it was possible. But anyway, Rose is living her best life, and then all of a sudden she's supposed to go visit her friend the next day, and friend doesn't answer the door, so she goes to the nurse, and she's like, I think something may be wrong. Well, come to find out, it seems as though this particular lady has fallen in an accident and passed away. And Rose just feels something is off by that whole situation. Something about the scene seems off. And so she's skeptical, to say the least, but I'm not trying to spoil anything too much. And so from there, Rose is like, yeah, I guess it could have been an accident, but I don't think it was really an accident. She seemed like, it just feels like somebody would have heard something. And that's another thing too, is like, how did nobody really hear anything? Like, I understand, maybe their hearing is slightly going, maybe they don't hear as well as they used to, maybe they took their Ambien and just crash at night, I don't know, 8 p.m. what time do elderlies go to bed? Like 7? Because if 7 is their bedtime, then I am not far from being old myself. Because I am an early bird when it comes to going to bed. I'm already halfway there. Heck, sign me up. I was talking to my mom the other day, and I was like, Mom, how old do you have to be to get into like a retirement community? And she's like, oh, I don't know, like 60, 62. I'm like, so you could join a retirement community? She's like, yeah, but why would I want to? I was like, they do shuffleboard? They have games? You could do aqua aerobics or whatever, water aerobics. And she's like, no, I'm having too much fun. And I'm like, okay, Mom, whatever. Just let me know because I'll join you. Can't imagine that I don't know. I was about to say the dating scene because I tend to date younger than myself, but I mean, potentially there's still quite a few single guys on the rebound in a retirement community. Am I being awful? Potentially I'm being awful. But just to add some levity to the horrific acts in this book, some of them are very sad. Some of the characters who do meet their end, it seems very, very tragic, and they seem to be suffering in a lot of ways. And that was some of the parts that was hard for me to read. To know that as they're going through their final moments, that some of them are experiencing some of the worst pain or shame or torment or what have you that they ever have in their life. Now, at one point, the murderer does provide some drugs, some mind-altering substances, and these people start to be able to hallucinate quite severely. And so that's a whole thing as well. Now, I did have to listen to it at about a 1.25 speed. I think that was another thing that I thought was a little bit slow. I don't know if it really needed to be this long. And even the audiobook, probably I could have listened to it at a 1.5 and still have been fine. It just felt just a little bit slow, though they did great with the narration and some of the voice changes. Now, it is a slasher. So, I mean, even though you're not physically seeing blood spatter on the walls, you're going to be able to picture it pretty vividly from the way these scenes are described. Or someone flying off a building and the remnants that are left below. There is just a very small part that is slightly supernatural, and I liked it. I almost wish it was just like a little bit more, because there are a couple of older ladies who are, or think of themselves as witches. They are 3 sisters who live together, who have fashioned bunk beds in their room in order to be able to share a space together. But they go over to this super sketchy warehouse to perform their rituals. And let's just say the killer finds out about that and does not make their ending very pleasant. But they also seem to leave something behind as well. And we do get potentially some spooky ghosts from these witchy ladies, and I really liked that. But yeah, so some of it is really entertaining and engaging. I picked this up because I wanted a horror book for the spooky season, and I think I got a fairly good horror slasher book. And of course, with horror slasher books, we need to be able to suspend a lot of belief when it comes to, I guess, police procedural work, and potentially neighbors overhearing things and things of that nature. Now, in a lot of various slasher movies, they're in very isolated areas, but I'm like, there's quite a few people, it seems, in this retirement community. There's not by the end of the book. I'm just going to let you know, there is quite a bit of demise. I'm trying to be as polite as possible, but let's just say the population in this retirement home goes down a good 10% probably. I don't know how many people are there, but man, they take a hit to their occupancy. And I can't imagine that family members are going to be eager to sign up their parents or, their elderly relatives to go to this retirement community in the future. Not after this particular historical event happens. But anyway, with all of that being said, I did have a very gruesome, engaging time reading this book. I was going to say entertaining, and yes, it is entertaining in the same way as Slasher is, but it's also kind of like, cringe, cover my eyes, and, all that sort of things, or like, I didn't want to hear that. But with all of that being said, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I think I finally reached the end of the list of books I needed to review for today. Sometimes when I have quite a few books, I try to make post-it notes so I can remember and keep on track with what I'm supposed to record. So now I do still have one more, but I think I'm going to wait till potentially next weekend to do it. But I have 1, 2 that I probably could record today, but I'm going to hold off. And then 3 more for next week. So I'm doing pretty darn good, I do believe. With all of that being said, I want to thank you. And I may have already said that already. But until next time, I will see you all on the next page. Have a great one.